The message appeared on my phone while I was reviewing patient reports at the clinic. Dad's birthday dinner tonight, 6 p.m. Please try to make it this time. It was from Mom. I looked at the clock. 4:47 p.m. In front of me lay a pile of emergency case files from the night before. I still had 3 surgeries scheduled for tomorrow, 2 research reports due for submission, and a pending video call with the pharmaceutical company regarding the latest drug trial results. I sighed. Work could wait. It was Dad's 72nd birthday. He'd been talking about it for weeks. I closed my laptop, packed my bag, and locked the office. The drive across town felt longer than usual, but the sight of my childhood home brought a strange comfort. The same white fence, the same trimmed hedges, and the same house where I'd once announced that I wanted to be a veterinarian instead of a doctor. As I entered through the kitchen door, Mom's voice greeted me. "Sarah's here," she called. She looked relieved. "We were wondering if you'd make it." I smiled, hugging her. "Tough day at the hospital," I said. The warm aroma of her signature roast beef filled the kitchen, the same meal she'd made for every family birthday since I was little. Kelly, my older sister, looked up from her phone and raised an eyebrow at my scrubs and cardigan. "Let me guess. Another emergency with someone's pet?" "Something like that," I replied, washing my hands. Out the window, I could see Dad arranging the outdoor speakers in the backyard. He never missed playing old jazz tunes during family dinners. Mom placed a basket of dinner rolls on the counter. "Sarah works so hard," she said proudly. "She was still at the clinic past 5, Kelly smirked. "Someone has to take care of the puppies and kittens, I guess. Still don't understand why you didn't go to medical school like we talked about. Real prestige. Real money." I dried my hands with Mom's faded blue dish towel. "Veterinary medicine suits me," I said simply. Marcus, my brother, stepped into the kitchen, tugging at his tie. "The animal doctor is here," he joked. "Save any lives today?" "A few," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Marcus just closed another big commercial loan," Kelly said, proud as ever. 7 figures this time. "That's great," I said sincerely. Marcus worked hard. He'd built a solid career in banking and made our parents proud. Dad walked in just then, still smiling from outside. "Real money, real impact," he said, patting Marcus on the shoulder. Then he turned to me. "Not that your work isn't important, sweetheart," he added quickly. "But you know what I mean." I did. I'd heard it my entire life. They respected me but didn't see my work as equal. 15 years after graduating from veterinary school, I was still the animal doctor in a family that valued titles and status more than passion. Every family gathering came with the same polite suggestion. Maybe it wasn't too late to move into human medicine. Dinner was ready. Mom set the table with her best china, the same floral plates we used for every special occasion. The table talk followed a familiar rhythm. Marcus discussed interest rates and market forecasts. Kelly went on about her marketing firm's newest client campaign. Dad shared stories about golf and his retired friends. Mom chatted about upcoming holidays. Then came the inevitable question. "Sarah, how's the animal business?" Uncle Bob asked as he sliced his roast beef. "Still playing with puppies all day?" Laughter spread across the table. It wasn't cruel, just clueless. They saw my work as something cute, something harmless. "Business is steady," I said evenly. "We've been busy lately." "Sarah's clinic is always busy," Mom said warmly. "She works long hours." "Well, animals get sick too," Aunt Linda added kindly. "Someone's got to take care of them." Kelly put down her fork. "Still, I wonder what you could have done in human medicine. All that intelligence focused on saving people instead of animals." "Animals matter too," I said softly. "Of course they do," Dad said quickly, as if to balance the tone. "But the impact is different. Marcus helps entire companies. Kelly's campaigns reach millions. You're helping one pet at a time," I nodded. There was no point arguing. From their view, my work looked small. 1 dog, 1 cat, 1 appointment at a time. They didn't see the late nights spent on data analysis, the collaborative projects with human medicine researchers, or the pharmaceutical trials testing new treatments that could improve both animal and human health. Mom smiled nostalgically. "Remember when you were little? You always brought home injured birds or stray cats. We should have known you'd end up working with animals. Kelly laughed. Some things never change. Still playing with animals instead of getting a real job. More laughter. I smiled politely and began clearing plates, as I always did when the joke started. I'd learned that silence worked better than trying to defend what they couldn't understand. Mom carried the birthday cake into the living room. "Coffee and cake, everyone," she said. "Let's move before it gets cold." We gathered in the living room where the same furniture from decades ago still stood, the floral couch, the wooden coffee table with old photo albums beneath it. Dad reached for the remote. "Let's check the news before we start." He flipped through the channels until the local evening news appeared. The anchor was mid-sentence. "And in medical news tonight, a groundbreaking veterinary research project at State University has earned national recognition for its potential to transform both animal and human healthcare." I looked up from my cup of coffee. My heart skipped. I recognized the story immediately. It was about our clinic's joint project with the university, the one I'd been working on for 2 years. The pharmaceutical company had mentioned possible media coverage, but I hadn't expected it to air tonight of all nights. The newscaster's voice filled the room. "The American Veterinary Medical Association has presented its top research honor to Dr. Sarah Chen for her groundbreaking work in developing targeted cancer treatments that show promise for both animals and humans." The living room went completely silent. Mom's hand froze midair, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. The report continued. "Dr. Chen's research in comparative oncology has gained attention from major pharmaceutical companies and human medical institutions. Experts believe her findings could reshape cancer treatment across species." The screen switched to footage from yesterday's ceremony. There I was, standing on stage under bright lights, holding the crystal award I'd barely had time to appreciate. I'd worn the navy dress I bought just for that event. The anchor's voice went on. "The treatment protocol developed by Dr. Chen has achieved remarkable success in early trials. Multiple universities are now working with her team to adapt these results for human patients." Then came the sound of glass breaking. Mom's plate slipped from her hands and shattered on the hardwood floor. The echo lingered. The research group led by Dr. Chen has been awarded a 3-year, $12 million grant to expand their studies, one of the largest ever given to a veterinary program, the reporter continued. Dad stared at the screen, then at me, then back again. My name appeared in bold under my photo. "We're joined now by Dr. Michael Roberts from the National Cancer Institute," the anchor said. "Doctor, what is the significance of Dr. Chen's work?" A distinguished man in a white lab coat appeared. "Dr. Chen's research marks a major turning point in oncology," he said. "Her work with naturally occurring cancers in animals has provided insights that human medicine has been chasing for decades. This could change how we treat cancer across species." Kelly slowly put down her cup. Her expression shifted from amusement to disbelief. "Sarah," she said softly. $12 million? I nodded. "The grant covers the next research phase," I said, keeping my tone calm. Marcus blinked at the television. "You're on national news," he said quietly. "The whole country's hearing about this." "The pharmaceutical companies are involved," I said. "They're interested in the broader applications." I watched as their faces shifted from confusion to realization. The story they'd just heard had rewritten everything they thought they knew about my career. The anchor continued. "Dr. Chen's studies have been published in both veterinary and human medical journals. Her work is now being cited worldwide as a breakthrough in comparative cancer research." Dad leaned forward. "Published in human journals?" "Both," I said. "Cancer behaves similarly across mammal species. Treatments that work for animals can often help people too." The broadcast switched to scenes from my lab. Rows of machines, diagnostic scanners, imaging tools, the kind of setup they'd never associate with an animal clinic. Mom looked at the screen, her voice trembling. "You never mentioned any of this." I turned toward her. "You never asked about the research side," I said gently. "When people ask what I do, they want to hear about puppies and kittens, not data analysis." "Data analysis?" Uncle Bob said, surprised. "I spend most of my time reviewing treatment outcomes and studying molecular responses. I explained. The actual patient exams are only a fraction of the work. The news anchor continued. Dr. Chen's grant will fund expanded research across several veterinary hospitals. The goal is to develop cancer treatments that can help both animal and human patients. Kelly picked up her phone, scrolling quickly. There are articles about you everywhere, she said. Forbes has a feature. Medical journals, industry reports. You're listed as one of the top veterinary researchers in the country. I nodded. Cancer treatment is a major field for both veterinary and human medicine. Pharmaceutical companies track every new development. Dad looked stunned. Why didn't you tell us? All these years we thought you were just treating pets. I still treat them, I said quietly. But to treat cancer, you have to understand it at its deepest level. What helps animals can help humans too. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. $12 million, he said slowly. That's more than most business loans I approve. And we've been telling you to find a real job. Kelly gave a small, almost embarrassed laugh. All this time I thought you were doing simple checkups. And you've been leading cancer research? Mom leaned forward, tears in her eyes. You're working on treatments for human cancer. The science overlaps, I said. Dogs often develop the same cancers people do. When a treatment works for them, it gives us data that human researchers can use. The similarities are closer than people realize. The report ended with details about our next project expansion and partnerships with major hospitals. My picture stayed on the screen for a moment before the bar. Anchor moved on to another story. Dad reached for the remote and muted the TV. The only sound left was faint. Birthday music coming? From the backyard speakers. He took a deep breath. Sarah, he said quietly. I owe you an apology. We all do. You don't, I said, my voice calm. I never hid anything. I just didn't talk about the research because most people aren't interested in the technical side. Mom shook her head slowly. But we're your family. We should have understood what you were doing all these years. I looked at her kindly. You knew I loved my work. That was enough for me. Kelly glanced up from her phone, her expression softer now. This article says your research could help children with cancer, she said quietly. Her words hung in the air. For years, they'd seen my work as simple animal care. Tonight, they finally saw what it really meant. Kelly's voice broke the silence. You're helping develop treatments for children with cancer? She asked quietly. Some of these methods are showing promise for pediatric cases? I nodded. Yes. Cross-species studies often reveal insights that traditional human-only research misses. Sometimes the most unexpected findings come from animal trials. Uncle Bob shook his head slowly. All these years we teased you about playing with animals, and here you are helping develop cancer treatments. The animals are still the most rewarding part, I said honestly. Every patient matters, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. Marcus stood by the window, looking out at the backyard where we'd hosted birthdays, barbecues, and countless family gatherings. I spend my days approving business loans, he said softly. It's decent work, good money. But it's not life-changing like this. Your work builds communities, I reminded him. That matters too. He turned, shaking his head. Not in the same way. You're saving lives, Sarah. Dad picked up the remote and unmuted the TV. Let's see if anyone else is covering this story, he said. He flipped through channels until more reports appeared. Each station had a similar segment. Details about the grant, the collaboration, and the research's potential to transform cancer treatment. Seeing my name and face appear again and again finally seemed to make it real for them. One anchor announced, Dr. Chen's comparative oncology research has gained international attention, with universities in Canada and Europe requesting collaboration. Mom turned to me, eyes wide. You're working with scientists around the world? Cancer research depends on global cooperation, I said. When we share data and treatment methods, progress happens faster. Kelly continued scrolling through her phone, reading headlines. This says you've been published 37 times in peer-reviewed journals over the past 5 years. I nodded. Research must be documented. Publishing results allows others to test, refine, and improve on the findings. Marcus gave a half smile. I don't publish anything. I just sign off on loans and balance accounts. Different work, different purpose, I replied. Finance helps people build futures. Research helps people survive to see them. Still, I could see a quiet shift taking place. For the first time, they were rethinking the value of their own professions compared to what they'd once dismissed as pet medicine. The contrast between their world and mine had never felt sharper. Dad reached across the couch and took my hand. Sarah, he said with pride, I've always been proud of you, but I never truly understood what you were accomplishing. You're the reason I kept going, I said. You showed me what persistence looks like. I just followed your example. Mom's voice softened. We tried to talk you out of veterinary medicine, she said. We thought human medicine was the only path that mattered. But you were already contributing to it in your own way. You only wanted the best for me, I said. That support meant more than you realized, even when we didn't agree. The evening news eventually ended. Dad turned off the TV. The house felt different now, quieter but charged with new understanding. Kelly looked thoughtful. We never really asked about your research, she admitted. You'd mentioned the clinic and we assumed that was everything. Most people do, I said. When they hear veterinary medicine, they think of pet checkups and surgeries, not drug development or molecular trials. It's easier to let them believe that than explain the science behind it. But we're your family, Marcus said firmly. We should have asked better questions. You asked the ones that mattered, I replied. Whether I was happy, whether I was stable, whether I believed in what I was doing. Those questions told me you cared. Dad stood and walked to the mantel, where framed photos lined the shelf. He picked up the picture from my veterinary school graduation. In it, I was standing between him and Mom, wearing a cap and gown, smiling so wide my cheeks ached that day. You were determined even then, he said. We suggested other paths, but you never wavered. I knew where I belonged, I said. The research was always part of my goal, even if I didn't explain it clearly back then. Mom still looked amazed. And now you're developing cancer treatments. Our daughter is helping save lives. The team is doing that, I said, gently correcting her. Science only works when people collaborate. Every breakthrough comes from hundreds of hands and minds working together. They nodded, though I could tell it would take time for them to absorb the full picture. For years, they'd pictured me in a small clinic surrounded by animals. Now they were seeing labs, data models, imaging machines, and global partnerships. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reflective. They were recalibrating their view of me, of what my work meant, and maybe of their own choices too. Dad set the graduation photo back on the mantel. You know, he said with a smile, when you were little, you used to nurse injured birds and stray dogs. I guess we should have realized then where this was heading. I just wanted to help, I said quietly. That never changed. The scale just got bigger. Kelly looked around the room, her expression softer now. I used to think your job was all about pets, she said. Now I see it's about people too. It always was, I said. Every animal we treat teaches us something that might one day help someone else. Marcus nodded. And we teased you about working long hours. I smiled. It's not the hours that matter. It's what you do with them. Mom reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry we didn't understand sooner. There's nothing to apologize for, I said. You've always been there for me. That's what counts. Outside, the backyard lights flickered as the evening deepened. The house was still, the earlier noise replaced by quiet pride. For the first time, my family saw the truth. Not a veterinarian treating animals, but a researcher helping to change medicine itself. And that realization, more than the awards or the headlines, was what finally felt like recognition. Years of lighthearted jokes about playing with animals had built an image that didn't fit with million-dollar grants or international research partnerships. The contrast now hung heavily in the room. I want to understand your work, Kelly said firmly, not just tonight, but for real. I want to know what you're researching and why it matters, I smiled. I'd like that. It's complex work, but the purpose is simple. We're trying to develop better treatments for patients, no matter how many legs they have. Can we see your lab? Marcus asked. I want to know where all this actually happens. Of course, I said. Just don't expect movie scenes. It's mostly analysis, documentation, and long hours staring at data. Dad put the graduation photo back on the mantel and said quietly, "I'd like to see what a day in your life really looks like." As we cleared away the cake and coffee cups, conversation turned to my work. Questions about the grant, how collaboration works, and how long it takes to develop a new therapy. They listened closely, not out of politeness, but with real curiosity. When I stood to leave, Mom hugged me. "Next time someone asks what you do, I'll have the right answer." "You already did," I said. "You've always told people I help animals. Everything else is just the technical part." Dad followed me to the door. "Those technical parts are saving lives," he said. "That's what matters." Driving home through familiar streets, I replayed the evening in my head. The surprise, the pride, the questions, they all felt surreal. For years, I'd kept my professional world separate from my family life. Now, they'd seen both collide on live television, but what meant more than the recognition or the money was their genuine interest. They wanted to understand, really understand, what I did and why it mattered. The next morning, I went back to my normal schedule. Patient rounds at dawn, lab work until noon, data review in the afternoon. But my phone kept buzzing. Kelly sent a message first. "Found another article about you." She included a link to a science magazine and added, "Told everyone at work that my sister is helping develop cancer treatments." A few hours later, Marcus texted, "Read this piece about veterinary oncology in an economics journal. Didn't know this field was such a major industry." Then Mom called. "Your father has been reading about veterinary research all morning. He says he missed a lot over the years and is trying to catch up." That night, Dad phoned me himself. "I've been studying comparative oncology," he said. "Can you explain how cancer similarities between species lead to new treatments?" For the first time, I was describing my research to someone in my family who wanted to hear the science, not just the results. We spoke for an hour about study design, peer review, collaboration networks, and the long path from data to discovery. "I'm sorry it took a TV report for us to understand," he said before hanging up. "But I'm glad we finally do." 2 weeks later, my entire family visited the research center. They met my team, toured the labs, and watched a presentation about our ongoing studies. Mom asked about animal care standards during clinical trials. Kelly wanted to know how research findings were communicated to the public. Marcus was fascinated by the economics of pharmaceutical development. Dad stood by one of the imaging machines, watching the equipment scan tissue samples. "This is incredible," he said. "It's nothing like what I pictured when you said you worked with animals." "We do work with them," I said, leading him toward one of our canine cancer patients receiving treatment. "But veterinary medicine today uses the same scientific standards as human medicine. Even stricter in some ways," said Dr. Peterson, my research partner. "Animals can't tell us how they feel, so we depend on precise data and observation." Watching my family move through the lab, I realized something. I had helped create their misunderstanding by not explaining more. It had been easier to let them believe in the simple version, the one with puppies and kittens, than to challenge them with the technical truth. "Why didn't you make us learn about this earlier?" Kelly asked as the tour ended. "I didn't think you wanted to," I said honestly. When I mentioned data analysis or gene sequencing, most people's eyes glazed over. "It was simpler to talk about the animals." Mom shook her head. "We missed so much. All these years, we thought it was just a job you loved. We didn't see the impact." "You saw the part that mattered most," I said. "You saw that I loved what I did. That was enough." 6 months later, our team published new research in both veterinary and human medical journals. My family read every word. They'd learned enough about the process to understand the importance of peer review, collaboration, and publication. At our next family dinner, Dad pulled out a printed article and read aloud. "Dr. Sarah Chen and her research team have achieved remarkable success in developing targeted cancer therapies. The results have major implications for both animal and human oncology. Mom's face lit up with pride. "That's our Sarah," she said softly, for the first time. They understood what that recognition meant, not as an abstract headline, but as proof of years of quiet, disciplined work. The awards and grants had been gratifying, but nothing compared to that moment. Having my family understand the value of my work meant more than any professional title ever could. They no longer saw my career as an alternative to real medicine. They saw it as science, as innovation, as contribution. Next time someone asked Kelly what I did, she smiled and said, "I'll need at least 10 minutes to explain it. Just tell them I help animals," I said, smiling back. "Everything else is technical detail." Dad placed a hand on my shoulder. "Those technical details," he said, "are changing the world." And for once, we all knew that was true.